peace of my mind. Fear falls away, crack the shell of a new day.
Hey, Aboro boy. Good to see y'all today. This is Oluofa Kolade of Idinka Ifa Temple, and I wanted to welcome you to our Temple men's group, but I want to expand it out, so I'm changing the format a bit. This is our monthly Making of Men's meetup, and I want to expand it a bit so that the whole community can have the benefit of these wonderful conversations that men and traditional African traditions are having, particularly Black men, particularly African men are having in our systems. So today is going to be a wonderful, wonderful treat. We're going to have a great friend of mine who I've known for over 10, 15 years. So before we begin, I want to open with prayer, a brief prayer, but prayer nonetheless. So, Olodumare, we ask that you would come and support all of us today. We ask that you would remove the problems, the boundaries, the issues that many of us may have, and replace negative energy of death, sickness, conflicts, fights, war, litigation, losses, outright fights, and all sorts of challenges. Remove that and replace it with long life, wealth, good spouses, good children, peace of mind, joy, healing, and victory. Help us to experience victory. We ask that you would support us as we have this very wonderful and important and poignant conversation about manhood within African traditions. Emma kamimene amo, Emma kamimene ano, Emma kamimene adelokun, etamole tori ifa alonimi, ebora timpanini, enibanami, àwọn àti ifa lelejo ashe. All right, so thank you very much for joining us. All right, I want to begin with an introduction of a really good friend of mine, and this is something I would say I've known this brother on a personal level for at least 10 to 15 years. Always been inspiring to me. I watched some of his work maybe I would say 10, 15 years ago, and I was like, man, this is the direction I think African spirituality should be going in terms of reaching our people. So I want to introduce and give a bio for Brother Huno Ile Tunji Bedolo Kennedy. So Huno Ile Tunji, he is a very distinguished West African voodoo priest and respected figure in the spiritual system and health communities. Since 2007, he has dedicated his life to the practice and teaching of voodoo, a rich tradition deeply rooted in African spirituality. His journey into this spiritual realm began with initiating to the Orisha Oya in 2009, following with a full apprenticeship that spanned from 2008 to 2012. And during that very pivotal period, it shaped his understanding of the spiritual practices and beliefs inherent in voodoo. In 2012, Huno Iletunji took the significant step in his spiritual path by traveling to Benin Republic, also known as Dahomey, where he was initiated into Fa under the prestigious Basile lineage. This initiation deepened his connection to the ancient wisdom of African spirituality and further enriched his practice. The culmination of his training came in 2017 when he was ordained by the Dagbo Huno, the Pope of Voodoo, an honor that cemented his status as a knowledgeable and revered priest within the Voodoo community. His teachings and practices not only encompass spiritual guidance, but also weave in the elements of health and wellness, reflecting his background as a health professional and practice manager. Beyond his spiritual endeavors, Uno Iletunji is a dedicated social entrepreneur, using his skills and experience to impact the community in a positive way. He has actively contributed to so many nonprofit organizations, serving on multiple boards of directors and advocating for social change and support for vulnerable populations. In addition to all of this, his professional and spiritual commitments, Huno Iletunji has enjoyed a loving, supportive family. He has been married for over 17 years and is the proud father of 3 children, balancing the roles of husband, father, and community leader. With a passion for sharing his knowledge, Huno Iletunji has visited and lectured in over 41 countries, imparting his wisdom on voodoo, health, social entrepreneurship. His work transcends borders, uniting people throughout the shared understanding of culture, spirituality, and the pursuit of a healthier, more equitable world. Huno continues to inspire those around him through his unwavering commitment to his faith, his commitment to his community, commitment to his family, and making him a truly remarkable figure in the contemporary spiritual practice and social advocacy. So, without any further ado, I want to introduce my good brother, Huno Iletunji. To the stage.
All right. Yeah. How you doing?
All right. Good to see you, Baba. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
And it's good to be here.
Yeah. It's so good to have this brother on here. So I want to begin this conversation by telling folks, please like and share. This is going to be something that will be transformational to men and women all over the world. So please like and share. First question. Give us a little bit about yourself. What is your name and where are you from?
Greetings. My name is Huno Iletunji. Huno is actually a title. Huno, or Hu in Fongbe language, which is spoken in the Benin Republic, formerly known as Dahomey. Hu means blood, and Huno means the owner of blood. And so Hu also is the indigenous name for spirit. And so as our West African ancestors saw God, they saw God, Olodumare, Mawu, Lisa, as the ultimate source of life. But at the same time as it's the ultimate source of life, they also saw it as the one that delegates power to assist with destiny. And so a Huno is a person who is the caretaker of the repository of blessings to be able to help assist the person fix their life. And so, just like if you had a TV that was broken, you wouldn't take it to the head of the Samsung Corporation to fix the TV. You would take it to the local service representative. And so, an Huno is a recognized service representative as far as your life, whether it be health, whether it be matters of love, whether it be a matter of prosperity, of just social ease and dis-ease. Huno is the owner of a shrine that would be the local depository with the blessing of the ancestors and of the spirit to help assist people with their life. And so Huno Iletunji, in the most indigenous way, we would say Ilatunji. In Yoruba, we would say Iletunji, but it means the house or the earth is reincarnated. And so that name is related to my deity, Babaluaye, the king of the earth. And the village, particularly my village, was destroyed and dismantled, and many of the men were taken and women taken to the Americas. And so Tunji, any name with Tunji means reincarnated or has returned. And so Ile or Ilatunji is the earth or the entire village has returned home. And so, my name speaks of that.
That's powerful, brother. That's powerful. You're answering so many things when you say that. And think of this, and it's so funny because some of these questions, we spend so much time discussing, but I want you to share with the people, please. Were you born into African spirituality, voodoo, Ifa, all of these things, or how did you become interested in this? If you were not born into it, how did you become interested into this tradition?
Great. So I'm from the town. I was born in Oakland, California, in Alameda Hospital in 1972. So I'm African American, born on this side of the waters. I grew up in a very Black conscious household, but a very Christian household. In fact, my father is the pastor of the Maranatha Seventh-day Adventist Church in Tucson, Arizona. And so I grew up as a Christian. My father's an active pastor. He has a church. My grandfather was a bishop, Holiness Church of God of Christ, as well as, many other denominations, and my great-grandfather. So I come from like a church background, but how I got into African spirituality, growing up in the church, I actually went to college and I was pursuing theology. And, I got to a point when sometimes you know too much. And I was like, this might be good spiritually, but it is not relevant to right now as far as solving some of our real life social problems. And so, I kind of got out of the church. I didn't know anything better. So I just was kind of church adjacent until I actually went to Cuba. I was a musician and I encountered African spirituality in a very positive way for the first time. I was scared. I went to take a music class and I was feeling the rhythm, and the person explained to me what the Orisha are. And they said, you know what? You're not here for this music class. Each one of these instruments is actually a deity. And I was like, I feel close to God when I make music. And they were like, this clav keeps a 2/3 time that you find in all salsa and African music. And this is Elegua. This is like Eshu. And then the Shekere, this is Oshun, which is the goddess of love and understanding that moves around the beat. And then he was explaining each instrument in a salsa orchestra and how it relates to a divinity. And I was like, oh, I feel the groove when they all are working together in harmony. Man, I can feel that groove. And so that's what got me in. And they said, look, every musician who's come from this island got their mano de arula. They knew their destiny and they knew their taboos. And they, the person was just reading me. He said, for you to go to the next level as a musician, you need to know your taboos. And I was like, well, what's that? And that led me down the journey. I wound up going back about 4 times. At that time, I was a concert promoter, composer, and in the music industry for about 15 years until I retired in 2010. But that's how I got into African spirituality, and slowly it just made sense, and it, I was like, man, this is it. Like, I need this.
Ashe. That's very interesting. It's so important to look at that process in the sense of so many of us as Africans born in America, coming from a church background, and not only a church background, but even hoodoo background, and all of those things. You mentioned Church of God in Christ. All of those things are honestly incorporated, and they inform our perspective in practicing an African indigenous religion, and we can't help but bring our flavor to it, because it is us. When you speak of that, I want to ask, like, what specific, because I know the story, but what are the specific circumstances that led to your path in West African voodoo? And what I mean is, like, what are those implications in today's African spiritual environment? Because knowing you, like, I remember talking about, I went to Nigeria, and this lane opened in Dahomey, and it just blossomed into this incredible existence that we see before us right now in the form of you. What led to that? What were your circumstances that led you to voodoo in particular?
When I began to study, I was studying in Cuba. I met some really great people. At that time, I had been living in Mexico, so my Spanish was pretty good, but not really well enough to understand things at a profound level. And I traveled to Brazil to learn more because I really liked the flavor. But I said, if I'm going to really pursue something African, I'm going to go home. And I was just at a turning point in my life. I was ready to get married. I had spent, all of my 20s, in the pursuit of music, really being around, gangsters, people on the edge of life, the underworld around, prostitutes, pimps, hustlers, con people, all the people you find in the music industry, right? And so I was ready to get married and make a change in my life, because spiritually, I had become transformed by what I was around. And so, but I said, I'm going to re-look at religion again as an adult. And I'm going to go to Africa and see what Christianity has done in Africa. I'm going to go and see what Islam has done in Africa, because Christianity's been there for about 2,000 years. Islam for, over 800 plus years, or 1,300 years. And then also African spirituality. And, I'm going to go with the open mind and just see what's happening on the ground. And so when I went to Africa, it showed me, like, I was like, Christianity, unfortunately, it has been co-opted, and particularly like in Nigeria, if you saw with the election of Trump, you have Nigerian pastors promoting Trump, and that's not even in their country. But churches and funding, and oil, and those who have big investments also have big investments and church funding like the Assembly of Gods, who are pro right wing and maybe anti black in Nigeria, they're loved. And so I was like, I can't do the Christian thing. Islam, what I experienced in Mali, the month I spent there, was so beautiful, but I was still politically, I felt it from a spiritual level, because anything we as Black people do carries a beauty to it. But when I went to Ghana and I experienced, I had a really spiritual experience, and that was what was a catalyst for me. And so voodoo in particular right now, is kind of like being a blood, you being in South Central, being a blood in the 80s and 90s, always outnumbered, always outgunned. And so, if you was wearing red, if you was flamed up, you had to be really about it, because you were gonna get checked everywhere you go, because you're surrounded by, and so at that time, Benin was a country that was the only one apologizing for their role in slavery, making amends for their role in slavery. In fact, they have a shrine, the Shrine of the Eternal Flame, that there's a light and people wail in that 24/7, and they have been doing that for years, and they make offerings every year for us in the diaspora. And so they seem to have a worldview as well as a spiritual system that, I really gravitated to. And, voodoo is actually it's harder. I tell people the distance from Lagos to Accra, Ghana, is the distance from Dallas to Houston. A 4-hour ride, a 3.5-hour ride. So Texas has a culture, a shared culture, but Houston and Dallas have a different culture. But if you're outside of it, it's just, Texas culture. And so likewise, the Yoruba and Dahomey, it's a shared culture, but there's certain things that kind of gravitated to me. The process, voodoo, in one sense, there's not a lot of books out on voodoo that are reputable, because it's more of a closed culture that you have to learn, master the student. Whereas Yoruba, it's a very outward culture. It's very big, it's very flashy. And so you can go look up Oshun dance, Oshun song. And so it may be easier to have a peripheral knowledge of African spirituality through Orisha and Yoruba. But because as a musician, as a Black musician, I learned how to learn from elders. And so for me, it made sense, because, if you got something good, they say game is to be sold, not told. And so, you have overnight experts that say, look, I figured out how to make $1 million in 10 minutes and buy my online course. And you be saying, like, really, if you had the secret to real estate, why are you selling me $100 course or a $2,000 course? Why aren't you just making millions that you're trying to teach me? And so, for me, I understood. And so a lot of things are closely guarded, but it preserves the power and authenticity. And so that's kind of how I chose the path. But I was initiated to Orisha, because when I got here, there was no one at that time really practicing. There were no temples. And so, Spirit led me to the Orisha, which has been the biggest blessing, because it allows me to travel around the world and relate to people, because the Yoruba people, what we call Nago, are such a huge people, and they have left such a mark throughout the diaspora. And I did a 3.5-year full-time apprenticeship every day, day in and out, under a Yoruba priest in Aluo. And so it gave me a beautiful grounding, and the Orisha have blessed me. But the particular path, how I practice and my specialty is voodoo. West African voodoo.
Word.
Mhm.
Well, I thank you for giving us all that, because we got to get that grounding in terms of, African spirituality. I want to talk about manhood, and
Yeah.
manhood in particular associated with, first on a personal level, and then I want to kind of expand out. So when I speak of this, you mentioned your father, and I want to ask, who is the one who gave you this charge of manhood, right? In terms of some of your greatest influences of the man that you are today, who gives you, or who gave you that charge, the inspiration, you know what I'm saying? Who gave you
Yeah.
example? Who are some
Y-
great examples of manhood that you have?
Definitely my father. My father, was my first hero, and still is is my hero. He is a man that I aspire to be like. And so that has been a true blessing and inspiration for me, having a living example of having my father in my day-to-day life. He is now 78 years old. 2 weeks ago, I have a foundation in Cartagena, Colombia, and I was like, I have not taken a trip with my dad, since the days of fishing as a kid, maybe 14, 15. So my dad and my brother and I just went on a men's trip together. But my father's been my inspiration. He was a Vietnam veteran. He's gone through a lot of personal transformations that have been inspiring for me. And, he's really a man's man. He was into sports. He's still playing baseball now, athletic, plays on the baseball team. They're always in tournaments. And, he served as like a role model for me. But when I think about manhood in general, for us, I really think to understand what manhood is, you have to understand what is the role of humanity and what is the role of life, period. And I think the core of just on role models for manhood is, one, understanding that we are all a small reflection of God. Mawu lives in us, Olodumare lives in us, and we are here to express, to create, to be an expression of the character of God, the beauty, the ugliness of God, the dark and the light. And so with that, our masculinity is centered around becoming and the continual evolution of our personal self as expression of God, and that masculine principle, that is contained in around that idea. And so, I would say, that's how I would answer. My father really has been my biggest role model.
Mm. I totally agree. My father as well is my biggest role model and hero. And when I think about that, it was so interesting. I was working with one of my sons today about manhood and rites of passage. And one of the things we kind of centered on was a conversation about examples. Like, if you are a man, woman as well, but if you are a man, men need examples. We need someone to say, I see that. I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. And when you say that, what is also implicit in what you're talking about is being a good example for our sons, our daughters.
Yeah, that's real.
You know what I'm saying? And in that regard, what's also happening is, I remember one of my uncles, who's also a minister, he would say, "Shut up and preach." You know, shut up and preach. They're all, all my family are ministers as well. But he would say, "Shut up and preach." And what does that mean?
That's it.
I don't care what you're talking about. What are you living?
That's it. That's it.
What are you living? How do you live? I want to see how you treat your wife. I want to see how you treat your children. How are you moving in humanity? And I'm happy to say, my father and my mother have demonstrated that, and they still continues in particular to do that as well. And as we enter this conversation about, makings of men and African manhood in America, African manhood and African traditions, that kind of opens up some other things in the sense of who are our examples.
And with that, I'm gonna jump in on that, because with my father being such an example for me, but I also learned how to reverse engineer. Meaning, as a musician, I studied music and musicians who came before me. And so you take a Miles Davis. Miles Davis came from a two-parent household. His mom, came from, Louisiana royalty, very bougie. And his father was a dentist, the first Black dentist in St. Louis. And so he came from the very upper crust of Black society. When he got into jazz and moved to New York, he stayed with Charlie Parker, who was a heroin addict. And, if you're trying to go to school and you come home and Bird is passed out, he pawned his instrument, and you got to help him bail it out because you got a little money you can get home. But he did it because he wanted to learn. And sometimes, for people who didn't necessarily come up in the best situation, you have to learn how to learn what not to do.
Facts.
And like I've been seeing lately, this lady on my timeline talking about therapy. Sometimes people use therapy as an excuse to avoid situations rather than to grow and to be able to live in harsh environments. And so, character is learning how to be in the roughest environments and learn what not to do. And where you say, that's not the part of the game that I want to be in. And you learn to reverse engineer it when there is a lack of what you want to emulate. You can learn the rules by learning what rules not to do. And so, we as a people, sometimes you have to hit a straight lick with a crooked stick. And so you won't have the perfect role models because no one is perfect. Even the Orisha are not perfect. And that's the beauty of the Orisha. They show you how to make it when you're not perfect, how to be the perfection and the perfect reflection of God as an individual beam of light. And as an individual beam of light, that means you're going to have some frequency you're not going to be able to hit because you're hitting your frequency. But everything has a beauty. And so being able to find the beauty, to take the meat, spit out the bones, especially when it comes to judging other people and learning from other people, So yeah, that's probably, I would say, for me, has been the best skills, because even quote unquote bad teachers or bad people have taught me some of the greatest lessons, including my own bad mistakes. I was like, man, I'm glad I made this mistake early in my priesthood, not later, because that would be, right now, it's just a sign of ignorance versus a sign of bad character.
Right. That's real. You mentioned that example about the Orisha. We were, me and my Olo were talking about how various Irumole and Orisha came to the earth and Ifa. And it wasn't that they didn't know their destiny. It was, how am I going to do it? How do I accomplish this here? And Ifa and Voodoo, what it assists us in doing is accomplish our destiny within the realm of good character within a harsh environment. You know what I'm saying? Within a struggle at in some degree. How do you maintain your character and not lose it?
Yeah.
In the midst of all this stuff, because if you lose it, then all these good things that you know you want, you may miss them. But those individuals who lost it, and you saw that, I don't want to do it like that.
Yep.
That's real.
Yeah, for real.
So when we talk about manhood, this is one of the really poignant questions, is what does Voodoo say about masculinity? And along with that, what role does gender play in Voodoo?
Yeah, that's a complex question, but I would say, in Voodoo, there is the absolute belief in one, Voodoo, the working definition that my elders have given me for what is Voodoo. They say that which brings harmony, that is Voodoo. When there is total discord, the introduction of Voodoo is to bring harmony. And so in music, you can make a strong statement by unison. Unison is when two people sing the same note, or everyone sings the same note. But the beauty of Black music is the harmonies, how we use seemingly dissonant tones to make a beautiful harmony. Earth, Wind, and Fire, where you might be in a major chord but put in a minor or an augmented minor, to make something that we call passing tones, where there is an ugliness that brings about a beauty, like capoeira, where you're doing some awkward looking move, but you're still in balance. And so when it comes to masculinity, one is flexibility. When it comes to priests, some of the roles that the masculine priest, stands very strong in is divination, but it is not, exclusive to men. One area where women stand very strong is in the form of possession, where the man uses tools to communicate with the oracle and to verify the messages of the Orisha that come through intuition and through esoteric knowledge. Women often physically and emotionally are more compatible with a total possession of bringing the deity into the body and making it come to flesh, come to life, by being fully filled up with the spirit to the point where they can float, levitate, bring healing, and pass messages. Where men often can achieve a partial fully, and that's just biologically, just from a priesthood, but there's many roles. One of the roles is as a guardian, that men are to be protectors of the community. In Dahomey, there's a rich tradition of women warriors. They've got a movie, The Woman King. So it's not saying that women cannot fight and cannot protect, because Black women can throw down. They can throw down. But men is to develop a protective role for the community, to amass knowledge and to translate knowledge into wisdom. that is not exclusive of men, but that is a trait that is highly prized upon men, on traditional men. Integrity is the highest value of masculinity, though it is not mutually exclusive just to men, but that is one of the highest characteristics. The lack of fear, developing a fearlessness, the willingness to face danger and to sacrifice oneself at all costs for the good of the family and the community. Having a high level of integrity, that is a masculine trait. It's interesting as I look at some of the different discussions we have in our community around love and around relationships. In Dahomey, some African societies are patrilineal. Others are matrilineal. The Ewe, which are cousins of the Fawn, and they practice voodoo as well. The Ewe people, you find them from Ghana and Togo. They make up the largest ethnic group in Togo and part of Ghana, as well as Benin. They are matrilineal, but the Fawn people are both matrilineal and patrilineal. And one of the things that it teaches us, for instance, and this is also, with Yoruba culture, a woman, if she divorces a man, a woman can divorce a man and leave the children with the man. The man takes care of the children because it leaves a woman in a vulnerable place economically in life to have to take care of the children. The man, because of inheritance, they carry the last name of the man and is the man's financial responsibility.
Right.
And so some of the discussions we have, from a traditional standpoint, it tells us, one, we have to be on point as men in this society. African spirituality is African reality. And so we've got to learn how to get the bag. How do we be able to exert ourselves from a financial standpoint? Food, clothing, shelter, education. And so, when you look at responsibilities, gender roles are very fluid in African spirituality. The roles are fluid. They're things that Oshun does, you can also see Ogun do. Now, Oshun can do a lot of things Ogun does, but she stays in her lane. I can help you have babies. I can help you work through your relationship. I can help you find understanding. I can bring you prosperity. Could I help you fight a war? Yes. I might not be the first one you call, but if no one else can solve it, Oshun is going to solve it.
Right.
And she might come in and dance her way through. She might entertain her way through, but she's going to solve a problem, but you're going to call on Ogun first. Likewise, Ogun can do many of the things Oshun can do, but there's things, everything has its limits. And so gender roles are very fluid. But the characteristics that we're to develop, I really love your Aluo's book, Omoluwabi, where he says, if you're sick all the time, that's bad character, because that means you're not showing up to work on time. If you're late all the time, that's bad character, because people are depending on you, and you should always have your sword ready. They say a sheath, arrow never sleeps in the sheath. That means, like Spice One said, a bullet has no name. The trigger has no heart. The bullet has no heart. Yeah. The bullet is always ready to fire. And so as men, we should always be ready. That doesn't mean we're always in an active state. Right. You're passive until that button is pulled. Right. But, we all have roles to play. And, the Orisha teaches that everyone's role is okay. Even the thing that is a variant in society, the albino, is It's a variant. You don't see albinos everywhere in Africa, but they exist. And they are to be loved and protected. And so the Orisha have they teach us about life and how to move in life and how to find harmony and balance where you have seemingly opposite things.
Man, I love that you said that. It's so interesting because I was teaching, as I talked to you about earlier, I was talking to one of my sons about rites of passage today. We kind of do a thing that's not as formal, but today the conversation hinged on two main points. And that one of the points was win the day, going into the world with a positive attitude and becoming 1% better every day. The second point that we focused on was have standards, stand for something. And what that also means is this concept of manhood it's not only the rough or the hard, but it is also the vulnerability, the need and desire, like, hey, you know what, let me check in with you. We pledge like, all right, I'm gonna check in. Let's talk. All right, if I've offended you, let's have some words and then figure it out. And then at peace. And the other thing about all of that is at the end of the day, as a man, you need to also, I was watching something that was talking about people who molest children, and what they would focus on is when they see a child that either the father wasn't in their life or their father didn't seem like a threat, then that child could be potentially fair game. And I was also saying to my child, I was like, yeah, all of these wonderful things, but have standards, stay dangerous. Yep. And folks on the line, you might be like, oh my God, he said stay dangerous. Yeah, stay dangerous. Because one thing I know about you is I know you working out. And this is something that we got to talk about as well as a community, is we have to remain physically viable and have a level of strength, because also that assists us in this work of working spirit, is having a healthy vessel, a strong vessel, because we're throwing stuff. And sometimes it can roll off if you pumping that iron or you hitting that heavy bag or whatever. Sometimes it's going to bounce off by the sheer fact that you have a mindset of, I have to remain viable, and I also need to remain in some way a threat. And anyway, that I just wanted to add that to it.
I mean, look, every voodoo, every Orisha, when you see the icons of the Orisha, every Orisha has a weapon. Even Obatala, the absolute highest representation, moral idea, and spirit of peace, has a silver sword. Oshun has her brass, dagger. Oya, Ogun. And so with the right hand, what we build, the left hand, we protect. That's important. We're not ready when 83% of our women are now technically obese in this country. When I travel, the biggest way to know if a person, like if I'm in Colombia, the only way I can tell if a person's African American most of the time or not is their weight. And we have adopted the culture of the United States. And this culture is so young, it don't know nothing about health. It don't care about health. It's about money. And so it's important
part.
that we take care of our body. Hygiene,
Mm.
you know, basic hygiene, sexually transmitted diseases. You know, there's a lot of erectile dysfunction in our
Yes.
community. You know, 25% of men under the age of 30.
Yes.
Then when you get over 30, you're looking at a third. And so a lot of relationship problems, a lot of frustrations, you know, are happening at a biological level. And so voodoo is really teaching us how to be in harmony with our environment, with our body, with our mind, with our spirit.
Mm. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
When we think about that, this question might have already been responded to, but I also want to include this in the fold: is what does voodoo offer to the current crisis and conflict between the genders?
All right. One, right now, our people are looking for answers.
Mm.
Most of the time, the people with the loudest voices are the youth,
Mhm.
you know, and that's good. Young people have a lot of good ideas, are bringing new solutions, but sometimes if you don't know that a solution already exists, you're going to keep, you know,
Mhm.
knowledge and civilization moves forward when you build upon the past. You filter out what didn't work and you take it and move forward. And so right now, there are modes of living, there are economic paradigms that our ancestors set up. There are social paradigms that are set up. One, beginning to really achieve a state of manhood means that one must have respect for women,
Ashe.
because everyone comes into this planet, into this world through a woman. Unless you know someone without an umbilical cord, everybody comes into this world through a woman. And so, as a man, you don't sit and look to blame for a problem.
Mm.
You look at whose responsibility it is to fix a problem. You know, if there's some spilt milk, a child says, "Oh, she did it, he did it, you know, this one did it." That's blame. But elders is like, whose responsibility? And so it is our responsibility to begin the healing of our families and our communities. Women have begun the work. That's not saying telling women to wait on men to figure it out. But as men, it's our responsibility to begin doing the healing, because we do understand a lot of our sisters has experienced so much trauma. You know, I was on social media, and I saw a post and it made me cry. And it was a comedian. He thought he was being funny, but he was talking about, you know, everybody knows that girl that used to allow guys to have sex with her in the stairway in high school. And, you know, as I thought about it, I was like, yeah, I do remember, you know, girls who would let the whole, you know, several men, you know, run a train on. Like, our women have endured so much trauma. Like, we as men, it's our responsibility, indicative, to make the first steps. And the first step is just healing yourself, freeing your mind from the ideas of Western patriarchy, and really coming home to yourself, what it is to be a human being. and to have feeling and to have empathy and to do the work, like starting with empathy for yourself, healing yourself, and then extending, once you see the portrait of God that is growing in you, extending that portrait to the other, to the person on the outside, to the other gender, to your neighbor. And so, we live in a time of trauma, and to ignore the trauma that got us here is not being genuine. I hear people talk about a white person's experience. I don't know any time where the mass group of Black women didn't have to work.
Right.
Like that wasn't even 5% of our community. So that's not our experience. But young people, because they don't know our past, they latch on to somebody else's history and think it's theirs. And so, for ourselves, I think voodoo in particular, it has several models. You can look at the woman warrior. You can look at the man in his phase, in his warriorship, what it really means to be a king, what it means to be a father, what it means to be alive. And so if you take the time to study, there's so many answers in our traditional ways of living. You hear people talk about, polygyny and polygamy and different things, but never having really studied what that was about. Right. How does that work? And so, I think many of the solutions we see for right now, the last 3 years, I've been really working with a lot of Venezuelan refugees. And it's put me in contact with it's expanded my understanding of the Orisha in voodoo. Imagine this. You have about 5 million Venezuelans living in Colombia. In Colombia, prostitution is legal. In fact, it's in the Constitution. So imagine this. If the Republicans, imagine J.D. Vance saying, this is a right to work country. If you don't have, we're not providing any social services. If you don't have money, you can go sell your ass.
Wow.
Literally, it's in the Constitution. So Colombia's had a right-wing government. They said, we're not providing social services because you can always sell your body on the street. And so where I'm going is, when I'm walking around, I see so many women with E-Days on. And sometimes I'm like, hold on. This is not supposed to happen. What is your story? Because why are you here? What taboo are you breaking? How do we correct? And, Baba, I am supporting my children, my mama, and my brothers and sisters, paying for their school back in Venezuela, and my grandparents. And all of that's on the back of a 19, 20-year-old girl. And so who is a initiated Orisha priestess? And I've met so many. And so, just in my work of divination, like understanding how we survived in slavery. How does America survive if we come to the point where our economy totally collapses? How do our religious ideas survive? Right. And how do we maintain dignity and respect? Because that's what our ancestors had to do during slavery and in post-Jim Crow. And so, the role of the voodoo man or the Orisha woman of trying to help a person in a bad situation make the best of whatever destiny they've received. Because even death has a destiny and was initiated. And so, for myself, understanding, how do we survive and make life better for ourselves, for our children? How do we safeguard ourselves against these problems? And what I found is those who are grounded in their tradition, in a cultural tradition, it's rare that I see like a person from Palenque out on the street like that. In a country where it's legal, where people pass out business cards, where it is not a social stigma. They'll sell fruit, they'll do other things. When you have a deeper cultural and spiritual connection. And so, I think at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, everybody needs help. And whether you're a professional basketball player, you need an edge. Whether you're a professional soccer player, whether you're, someone on the street, whether you're a hustler, whether you are a politician, whether you are a teacher. And, Ifa takes such a non-judgmental role, and we have shrines that help people through trauma, help people recover from trauma, deal with trauma, help people economically. And so, for me, I found it as a way that I can express what's in my heart, which is to try and help others and make the world a better way. I don't think it's for everyone. I don't proselytize and try and push it on anyone. But I think, regardless of religion, if you come and study your ancestors, you will inherit a deep inheritance, because most of us really have never even studied anything beyond Rosa Parks, civil rights era, slavery, maybe a few things we read online, but really come to understand what were we doing before we came to this country. How was Africa great before this experience?
Man, you're saying so many things, and that is so important in terms of learning, not even the concept of, the history, but more so the humanity of African people. And I think what is also so important that I don't see is that even our brothers and sisters on the continent, you need to understand what has occurred here in America as well. You need to understand that because so many individuals may find it difficult to come back home to the African tradition if they're judged by the standard of what the colonizer has put in place, in the sense of, you too rowdy. Oh, you are a rowdy individual. What did they say at the Super Bowl? Loud, ghetto, right?
You're not demure.
Right? Being an individual who might be identified as militant or whatever. And the thing of it is, hey, let's analyze not that, but what is the unique thing that occurred with that individual? Because we indeed have an ancestral connection. And in that ancestral connection, there is trauma. There's trauma on both sides. And it's not a situation where we need to fight about it. It's a situation where both sides need to heal. And I really think, as you mentioned, that the other thing is that Africans from the continent and Africans and Black folks in the diaspora, another thing that needs to occur is, how do we heal with each other after having all this stuff? Because you're talking about community, we're talking about masculinity and manhood and definitions of manhood and womanhood and what does that look like. And we are in a space, we're in a place in America where it like turned upside down, and honestly it's a whole new ball game in the sense of, people have developed a taste for taboo behavior. Like it it tickles the tongue.
Yes.
It's good to me to be so
Yes.
bad.
Yeah, that's real.
And
That's real. That's real.
how do we address all of that
You know,
here
um,
in America?
and these are the discussions we had. How do
Mhm.
we, as priests,
Right.
translate the needs of our community to
Right.
our elders back home?
Right.
You know, if you talk about molestation or certain things,
Yes.
they'll say, well, or incest, oh, we don't have that here.
Right.
But it exists. And so one of the rituals that we do, that I was trained in,
Mm.
after the war in Sierra Leone and in Liberia, many of the child soldiers who are returning home, many of them were forced to rape their mother, have other people rape, children raping parents, at gunpoint and killing, all of the things that went on psychologically. And now, after the peace treaty, we all have to live together. I have to return to the very villages that I terrorized, but I was just a child. I was doing this at 9 years old to survive. And so the rituals, my elders had a delegation from Benin that went to help the children translate. These soldiers, these child soldiers, get reacclimated to society. And so many of the rituals that were done for them, I use today, helping in our society where people have dealt with incest, rape, many situations. And so the ability to translate our needs and what we're going to, and for us to have honest discussions where we take off our mask, because we can always talk about the accolades of the African American. We have over 100 and plus HBCUs. I'm not sure. Am I still on, Baba? Oh, hold on. Okay, yeah, it looks like I'm still on. We can always talk about the great things we've done, but sometimes we actually have to look at where are our trauma, where are our pain points, and get real and try and find some solutions.
Yeah,
I think we lost.
Yeah, we went out. I'm so sorry, folks. Where I saw it go off, we were talking about individuals who had come into their villages and had done all these heinous things, and they had to come back to these villages. If we could kind of pick up there, please.
Yes. So these same rituals, are rituals we use in our temple today when dealing with incest, dealing with molestation, dealing with people who have experienced, serious life traumas. And so the solutions exist back at home. There's nothing new under the sun. And so, but that's part of the work that we as priests have to do, is translating, taking the wisdom that we have back home and making it relevant to our people, and being able to apply it to real life situations to solve real life problems in our community.
Okay. All right. So I feel like we've covered some ground. We've just really touched the surface.
Yeah, I know.
And introduced so many conversations here, that, we need to have even more about this. But I want to thank you, brother, so much for taking your time, because I know you're busy. I know personal what's going on. I know the struggle, and I thank you so much for joining us. I want people to know how they can either contact you.
Yes.
you're in the Dallas area or Irving, Texas, correct?
I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Dallas.
The temple is in Mesquite,
Gotcha.
which is like a suburb,
Okay. So Baba's in.
Okay,
in
so look, at this point, I'm off of most all social media. But if you are interested in getting a reading, having a divination done for yourself, if you're if you're a family and you need a divination as a couple, if you are looking at choosing a wife or a husband, if you're opening a business or trying to look and see how can I make my business grow, if you have problems with immigration, you can definitely reach out to me at my phone number. I'm gonna give you my phone number, and hit me up at 469-435-2126 and send me a text. Let me know that you saw me on Baba J's platform, Oluo's platform, and that you're interested in having a conversation, and we can go from there.
All right, thank you so much. I want to once again thank you, brother, and tell you I love you. We've seen each other in some very interesting times, and
yes,
it's been a continued beautiful journey. This brother knows my parents. I know his.
Yep.
I know and have met his parents. It's a different kind of relationship. I know his wife, his children. He knows my wife, my children, my mom, my dad, my sister. So it's a different kind of a relationship and friendship here. And I think that it's so important to create those kinds of relationships, and they're very, very rare to have friends in this environment. You gotta have folks that you can go to and really talk about what's going on with you in the positions that we're in. You can't do this without friends, and you can't do this without community, without real community.
That's real.
I want to thank you for being real community with me.
Hey, I say likewise.
I've known you. We've known each other. You've been over to my mom and daddy's house. Probably you know what I'm saying? It's like
yep.
We know each other like that. So
that's it.
This is a different kind of relationship that oftentimes you can't really even say. I can't even say that other folks that live closer, I don't have that kind of relationship with them. So I thank you for being that for me as a man and as a brother. So
likewise, you constantly inspire me. You constantly inspire me when from the first time we met in person. I think you picked me up. I think you had a Saab or some type of European car.
You pulled up down.
Yep, and a goat in the back, and I was like, "That's my brother. That's how we get down." I was like, "We cut from the same cloth." I was like, "This is my brother right here." He's about that life every day. I say, So thanks a lot for having me on, and man, I love you. Wonderful blessings to you, your temple. I was there at the dedication when you guys, first I've seen you through various stages of your priesthood and your manhood as a father, and man, I'm just just happy to be alive. It's beautiful to meet people on the journey that inspire you and push you to be better and do better. So I say,
yes,
right on.
I want to continue this process. I'm doing Makings of Men, and I would like Baba to be involved. Whenever you feel inclined, please join us. I do Makings of Men every third Thursday of the month. So
I say
we're transforming the format. I'm changing it to this kind of a format just so that we can reach people and have more intimate and real conversations
Ashe.
with other men, because we need to see examples, right? We need to
Yep.
see examples publicly. And so I think that that is super duper important. And as we close, Baba, I want to ask you if you will, bless us and close us out.
Ashe. Okay, right on. Ashe. Ashe. I go. I go. I go. The water that fire drank and died last night is the same water that we drink and live.
Ashe.
We pray that this water blesses us, that this water brings unity and harmony, that it brings coolness to our path, to our homes, to our ori, to our destiny, that it brings refreshment to our spirit, that this water heals and allows us to grow. May this offering of water be like something that is strong, at the same time flexible. May it be that this water bring the start of something new. Ashe. Ashe. Ashe.
All right. Thank you so much, Baba. Love you.
All right. Yeah, likewise. It's good to see you, brother. It's good to see you.
Ashe. All right, y'all. Please join us tomorrow. We're having our first meeting for our Idin-Ka Ifa Temple book club. Y'all know what we're reading. We're reading the book by Sibo Campbell entitled Sky Full of Elephants. So we're going to tap into that on tomorrow, 6 p.m. If you want to be involved, the only way you can join us on that is if you register on the website. Registration is totally free. All you got to do, register online. Please do that today, and I will be able to send you I'll send you the questions, send you the things that we need to be familiar with for our first meeting, which is tomorrow, 6 p.m. We do it on Zoom. I don't want to have that out to everyone. I want everybody to be tuned in and tapped in on Zoom with me as we do that. So Sky Full of Elephants tomorrow. Join us. We thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.